Once upon a time, in a world not too dissimilar from our own, there was a place called Driftwood Valley. Driftwood Valley was a quiet, unassuming place, where time seemed to move at a pace best described as lethargic. It was a town where nothing ever happened, and even the most exciting moments were, in reality, quite mundane. The town was nestled in the gentle embrace of rolling hills, which seemed to stretch on forever, their monotony interrupted only by the occasional tree or rock. The fields of wheat, too, were unremarkable in their uniformity, each stalk standing at the same height, swaying in unison with the breeze that never seemed to blow too strongly. At the heart of Driftwood Valley lay a small, unremarkable house, and in that house lived an equally unremarkable man named George. George was the epitome of monotony, his life a never-ending cycle of dull routines and uneventful tasks. Each morning, George would rise from his uninspired bed at precisely 7 a.m. He had no need for an alarm clock, for his internal body clock was unfailingly punctual. He would stretch his arms with a mechanical precision that was almost impressive in its predictability, and then slowly rise from his bed. His feet, clad in plain, gray socks, would meet the cold, creaky wooden floor, producing a sound that could only be described as unremarkable. George had an affinity for beige, a color that seemed to permeate every facet of his life. The wallpaper in his bedroom, the sheets on his bed, the curtains in his window, all were various shades of beige. Even his pajamas were a dull beige hue, and he wore them religiously, as if trying to blend in with the walls of his own home. After dressing in his beige attire, George would shuffle downstairs to the kitchen, where he would prepare a breakfast that was as uneventful as his life. He would take out a box of plain, unsweetened cereal and pour it into a beige bowl. There was no need for milk, George preferred to eat it dry, savoring the plain, tasteless crunch of each bite. A glass of tepid tap water, served in a beige glass, accompanied his meal, and he would sip it with all the enthusiasm of a sloth in winter. Once breakfast was over, George would pick up his beige briefcase, which contained documents that were equally as dull as he was, and head out the door. His walk to work was a masterclass in monotony, a route that seemed designed to avoid anything even remotely interesting. The path was a straight, unbroken line from his house to the office, which was conveniently located just around the corner. He never encountered anything out of the ordinary on his journey. No cheerful greetings from neighbors, no chirping birds, no unexpected surprises. The streets of Driftwood Valley were perpetually deserted, as if the entire world had agreed to collectively hit the snooze button on life. Arriving at his office, George would take the same elevator, which was predictably beige, to the same floor, which was predictably beige as well. He would settle into his predictably beige cubicle, facing a predictably beige wall. His job was as uninspiring as the rest of his existence. He spent his days sorting through stacks of paperwork, each sheet as identical as the last. His colleagues, who were just as unremarkable as he was, rarely spoke. When they did, their conversations revolved around topics that were mind-numbingly dull, like the weather or the latest office memo. Lunchtime was the only break in George's monotonous workday. He would trudge to the cafeteria, where the menu never changed. It consisted of a single option, a beige sandwich with beige bread, containing a beige filling. The only hint of color came from the pallid lettuce, which was more gray than green. George would sit alone at a beige table, eating his beige lunch in silence, occasionally contemplating the beigeness of it all. After what felt like an eternity, it was time to head home. The journey back was, predictably, as uneventful as the morning commute. George would return to his beige-filled house, remove his beige coat, and prepare another thrilling meal, this time spaghetti with no sauce. He found great satisfaction in the repetitive act of twirling the noodles around his fork and eating them one by one. Evenings in George's life were equally unremarkable. He had no hobbies, no interests, nothing to look forward to. He would spend his time sitting in his beige armchair, staring at the beige walls, and listening to the soothing tick-tock of his beige wall clock. Occasionally, he would flip through a beige book, but the words on the pages never seemed to hold his attention for long. At precisely 9 p.m., George would retire to his beige bedroom, change into his beige pajamas, and slip into his beige bed. He would lie there, staring up at the beige ceiling, as the world outside his window grew darker and quieter. And just like that, his uneventful day would come to an end, making way for another equally uneventful day to follow. And so, night after night, week after week, month after month, George's life continued in its ceaseless monotony. The world outside his beige cocoon seemed to pass him by, filled with vibrant colors and exciting adventures that he could only dream of. But for George, the beige was comforting. It was safe. It was his own little bubble of boredom in a world that could sometimes be just a little too exciting. As you read this story, you may feel the weight of George's uneventful existence pressing down on you, like a heavy blanket of beige. The sheer banality of his life has the power to lull you into a deep and restful slumber, where dreams are as dull and unremarkable as the life of our protagonist. So, if you find your eyelids growing heavy and your thoughts drifting away into the realm of the ordinary, know that you are not alone. George's story has that effect on people, and that is precisely how he likes it.